An army of heroes and villains back from the dead, an alien terrorist out for revenge, and a copycat robot powered by cosmic forces. Who are these villains the Avengers created? The clearest example of the Avengers creating a villain in the comics came when Dr. Hank Pym combined his expertise in robotics, biology, and chemistry to build his greatest creation, Ultron. Using his own brain patterns, Pym had no clue that giving this robot a twisted version of his own disturbed mind was asking for trouble. Barely mobile in his first form, Ultron came to life immediately upon receiving human brain patterns and immediately decided to rebel against his father. Indeed, Ultron reacted to Pym with a murderous Oedipus complex, wanting to kill and replace him. Ultron quickly evolved, later stealing the impervious metal adamantium for his new bodies. No matter how many times he's seemingly been destroyed for good, he's always had contingency plans in place. His general hatred of humanity led him to genocidal schemes like killing the entire population of Slorania. In the films, of course, it's Tony Stark who builds Ultron with the help of Bruce Banner. The film Ultron gets his brain patterns with a little help from Stark and the Mind Stone, and his actions ultimately lead to the destruction of Sokovia.
Don't compare me with Stark. It's a thing with me. Stark he's a sickness.
Kang was a 31st century layabout named Nathaniel Richards who was bored with the tranquility of his era and was fascinated by watching ancient recordings of heroes like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. When he stumbled upon a time machine, he used it to travel to ancient Egypt, where he conquered under the name Ramatut. After then conquering the 40th century, Kang decided to visit the 20th century to face the legendary Avengers. There, he was defeated, and fighting the Avengers became an obsession, leading to an infinite number of alternate timelines, some in which he beat the Avengers, some in which he lost, and others where he fought against himself. One of those possible versions of Kang was an older iteration named Immortus, who, having grown weary of conflict, dedicated himself to maintaining the timeline and protecting it against the machinations of his younger self. In this role, Immortus sometimes battled the Avengers and sometimes assisted them. How this will all play out in the MCU remains to be seen. The Disney Plus show Loki introduced a version of Immortus called He Who Remains, and he in turn introduced fans to the coming conflict between an infinite number of Kangs battling for the fate of the multiverse. With Kang set to appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it looks like the struggle between Kang and the Avengers is likely to take center stage in the MCU for years to come. Early in the Avengers' career, Nazi scientist Baron Heinrich Zemo realized that he couldn't defeat his arch-enemy, Captain America, on his own. So he recruited the enemies of the other Avengers: Thor's enemy, Radioactive Man, Giant Man's enemy, the Black Knight, and Iron Man's enemy, the Melter, to beat them as the Masters of Evil. That group failed and later disbanded after Baron Zemo's death, but it was just the first of many iterations of the Masters of Evil that have been formed over the years, always by villains who hold a grudge against the Avengers. Ultron, for instance, reformed the team to destroy his father, Hank Pym, while another Pym villain, Egghead, later built a new version to disgrace Pym and the Avengers. And the original Baron Zemo's son, Helmut Zemo, also put together his own Masters of Evil to avenge his father's death. This time, he nearly succeeded, destroying the Avengers' headquarters while capturing and seriously injuring several members before the reserves rallied to save the day. When the Avengers disappeared after fighting a menace called Onslaught, Zemo later responded by forming a new Masters of Evil that disguised themselves as superheroes and dubbed them the Thunderbolts. Given what a fan favorite the MCU version of Helmut Zemo has become, it would be an interesting twist to see him try to destroy the superhero team from within after working so hard to unsuccessfully destroy them from without. Simon Williams was a scientific genius whose company was a direct rival to Tony Stark. After Stark bankrupted him, he stole money to stay afloat. He was arrested, but the Masters of Evil offered him a chance at revenge. He was given superpowers along with the name Wonder Man in a scheme to infiltrate the Avengers and destroy them from within. Instead, though, he sacrificed his own life to save the team. Simon's brother Eric Williams then became the supervillain known as the Grim Reaper in order to get revenge on the Avengers for Simon's death. And he nearly succeeded. Only the unexpected intervention of the Black Panther saved the Avengers from certain death. Even when Wonder Man returned from seeming death and began a second career as an actor, the Grim Reaper regarded him as a fake version of his brother. The Reaper also had a grudge against the Vision, seeing him as someone who stole Simon's identity. The Reaper continued his crusade against the Avengers even after he died and his subsequent resurrection, despite his brothers welcoming him. So, can we expect to see any of this in the MCU? Well, Simon Williams was briefly seen in a deleted scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where, played by Nathan Fillion, he appeared on a number of fake movie posters, and the character also appeared in concept art for WandaVision. So, fingers crossed we get to see Wonder Man and Grim Reaper sooner rather than later. Remember the Grandmaster who was played so memorably in the films by Jeff Goldblum?
What's this?
Dial it down.
Well, in the comics, he's often gotten mixed up in games that use the Avengers as pawns, including one where the Grandmaster faced off in a challenge against Kang. When Kang picked the Avengers to be his champions, the Grandmaster created a new team to confront them, the Squadron Sinister. Hyperion came to Earth as a baby from a doomed microverse planet. Nighthawk was a millionaire whose powers grew stronger at night. Dr. Spectrum had a crystal that allowed him to create energy constructs, and the Wizard could run really fast. Sound familiar? They should, because the team was intended to be a joke version of the Justice League of America and its members Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and Flash. The Squadron Sinister was defeated and broke up, with Nighthawk becoming a superhero and the others turning to solo crime. And to complicate things even more, an alternate universe version of the team called the Squadron Supreme, where they are all good guys, later showed up. Don't expect to ever see either squadron in the MCU, though. We have a feeling the lawyers at AT&T wouldn't appreciate Marvel using the Justice League very much. Created by evil scientist group Advanced Idea Mechanics, the Super Adaptoid's original function was to destroy Captain America. With a sliver of the Cosmic Cube, aka the Tesseract, this robot had the power to adapt to any opponent by copying their powers. Which is where the Avengers come in, because thanks to their might, a true monster was created. Super Adaptoid nearly killed Cap in their first battle after absorbing the powers and skills of the Wasp, Hawkeye, and Goliath. As if that wasn't bad enough, he ultimately attempted to replace the entire population of Earth with Adaptoids. It would have worked if Captain America hadn't tricked him by challenging him to copy the most basic fact of being alive: death. The Super Adaptoid did, and promptly dropped dead. If only Thanos had been that easy to trick.
You should have gone for the head.
In the Operation Galactic Storm storyline, the Kree Supreme Intelligence deliberately started a war knowing that his people would lose. Why? He believed his race was at an evolutionary dead end and wanted to find a way to kickstart their development, so he used the war as a way to trick his people into detonating the Negabomb, which wiped out almost their entire species. After failing to stop this scheme, a faction of the Avengers led by Iron Man passed judgment on the Supreme Intelligence and executed him for his war crimes. That, in turn, led some of the few surviving Kree to vow vengeance on Earth and the Avengers. Led by Galen Kor, these Kree terrorists first tried to blow up the Earth, then tried to genetically mutate the population into Kree to rebuild their own people. But Galen Kor and his group were ultimately defeated thanks in part to the reborn Supreme Intelligence working against them. He had his own agenda. Thanks to having a lot of enemies with connections to either time travel or the afterlife, the Avengers have had to face multiple iterations of the Legion of the Unliving. These villain teams consisted of dead friends and foes that were either plucked from right before they died or yanked away from their eternal rewards. Kang commanded the first version, which included Wonder Man, Baron Heinrich Zemo, and the original Human Torch. Later, the Grandmaster cooked up a scheme that involved sending the Avengers to Death's realm. He nearly won, but Hawkeye cheated in a game of chance and Death was freed from the Grandmaster's control, ending the contest. So, could we ever see a Legion of the Unliving in the MCU? It seems unlikely, but given that things like the Marvel zombies have begun appearing on What If, anything is possible. The Grim Reaper took a cue from Baron Zemo and formed his own team of villains with grudges against the Avengers to help him out with his own, which he called the Lethal Legion. After being defeated the first time around, the Grim Reaper returned years later with an all-new team. This time they battled the West Coast Avengers, but while they had a power advantage, internal bickering broke the team up. Undeterred, the Grim Reaper put together a third team which also failed. Hey, They are villains. Their role is to lose in these stories. There was also one other lethal legion of note, also created specifically to oppose the Avengers. Count Nefaria, who had a long-standing grudge against the team, put together his own group. But they were unwitting dupes. Nefaria ended up absorbing all of their powers to turn himself into a literal Superman. The moral of the story? Never trust someone named Nefaria. You may know Dane Whitman and Cersei from the 2021 Marvel film Eternals, but you may not know that in the comics, their romance nearly destroyed the entire multiverse. In the comics, Dane Whitman, also known as the Black Knight, and Cersei were teammates. They got involved in a love triangle. She was into him, he was into someone else, which became problematic when Cersei's powers began turning her unstable and dangerous. Dane was eventually psychically bonded with her against his will to help control her powers. But that's not how it happened in every world. In another universe, Dane fell for Cersei, but she eventually ended up dumping him. So, in a supreme example of toxic masculinity, the incel Dane killed Cersei and the Avengers and then began traveling to alternate universes, hunting down Cersei in every reality. Changing his name to Proctor, he put together a team of alternate universe Avengers to help him. Called the Gatherers, most of these heroes were tricked into thinking they were saving the world from these unstable versions of Cersei, unaware that it was Proctor himself who was using his powers to destabilize Cersei in the first place. Ultimately, Proctor was killed by Cersei in the main comic reality. Here's hoping that the MCU versions of these characters have a much easier time of things. Of course, the movie Avengers have made just as many messes as the comic Avengers. Besides Ultron, there's also Baron Helmut Zemo, who vowed revenge on all superheroes after the Avengers failed to save his family in the Battle of Sokovia. And then there's the Battle of New York. Yes, the Avengers drove off the alien invasion, but they left a giant mess, both literally and figuratively. A mess that led to the Vulture selling alien tech to the highest bidder after he was screwed out of his rightful salvage contracts. Oh, and there's also Loki, who the Avengers unleashed on the entire multiverse when their time-traveling trip to the battle's aftermath went completely haywire. The Avengers, living proof that no good deed goes unpunished. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about Marvel are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.